Jason Statham. The name alone conjures images of ripped physiques, perfectly timed punches, and a steely glare that could melt glaciers. He's built a career on playing the tough guy, the no-nonsense hero who dispatches villains with brutal efficiency and a wry smirk. From his early days as a competitive diver to his breakout role in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Statham has always projected an aura of unwavering confidence and physical prowess. His action movie stardom is undeniable, a testament to his dedication and undeniable screen presence. He's headlined blockbuster franchises, becoming synonymous with high-octane thrills and breathtaking stunts. But even the toughest guys can find themselves in unexpected situations. Tonight, at a glittering charity gala, Statham was about to face a different kind of challenge, one that would test his mettle in ways he never imagined. A clash was brewing, not of fists, but of egos, and the outcome would stun everyone in attendance. If Statham was a symbol of self-made success, Julian Devereux represented the opposite end of the spectrum. The only son of tech mogul Richard Devereux, Julian had never known a day of struggle in his life. He was notorious for his extravagant spending, his Instagram feed a constant stream of private jets, luxury yachts, and exclusive parties. But what truly set Julian apart was his cruel wit and his penchant for publicly mocking those he deemed beneath him. He saw himself as a sophisticated arbiter of taste, and anyone who didn't meet his exacting standards was fair game for his cutting remarks. He thrived on the attention, the likes and shares amplifying his sense of superiority. Little did he know, his carefully curated world was about to collide with the unyielding force of Jason Statham. The annual Children's Hope Gala was a glittering affair, a sea of designer dresses and impeccably tailored suits. Champagne flowed freely, and the air hummed with the polite chatter of the city's elite. Statham, usually more at home on a movie set than a red carpet, stood out like a diamond in the rough. He was there to support the charity, a cause close to his heart, but he clearly felt the strain of forced pleasantries. Devereux, on the other hand, was in his element. He glided through the crowd like a shark in a fish tank, his eyes scanning for potential targets. The awkward social dynamic was palpable. Statham, the self-made man, surrounded by the beneficiaries of inherited wealth and privilege. Devereux, the self-proclaimed king of the social scene, ready to pounce on any perceived weakness. The stage was set for a clash. It began subtly. Devereux, after maneuvering himself into Statham's orbit, offered a disingenuous smile. "Mr. Statham," he drawled, his voice dripping with condescension, "I must confess, I'm a huge fan of your physicality." He paused, letting the word hang in the air. "But tell me," he continued, leaning in conspiratorially, "did you really need that many explosions in the transporter, refueled? It felt a tad excessive, even for a Statham vehicle. Almost as if you were compensating for something." The barb was veiled, but the intent was clear. Devereux was questioning Statham's range, implying his success was solely based on explosions and brawn, not genuine acting talent. It was a classic Devereux move, a seemingly harmless jab designed to prick and provoke. A flicker of annoyance crossed Statham's face, barely perceptible but definitely there. He took a slow sip of his water, his eyes fixed on Devereux. "Well, Julian," he said, his voice deceptively calm, "sometimes a good explosion is just a good explosion. Art for art's sake, you know." He offered a tight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. It was a dismissal, a polite attempt to shut down the conversation without escalating the situation. But beneath the surface, a volcano was rumbling. Statham wasn't one to back down from a fight, but he also knew how to pick his battles. This wasn't the time or the place for a physical altercation, but Devereux's words had clearly struck a nerve. The simmering tension was palpable. Devereux, mistaking Statham's restraint for weakness, pressed his advantage. "Art for art's sake," he chuckled, the sound grating. "Come now, Mr. Statham, let's be honest. You're hardly Laurence Olivier, are you? I mean, diving competitively must have been quite the workout, but did it really prepare you for emoting?" He paused again, this time letting his eyes rake over Statham's physique. "Perhaps you should stick to what you're good at, looking menacing and driving fast. Leave the acting to the actors." He then added, with a saccharine smile, "After all, some of us are born into certain advantages. Not everyone can be a self-made man, darling. Some of us just are." The jabs were becoming sharper, more personal, aimed at undermining Statham's entire career and background. The mention of being self-made seemed to trigger something in Devereux. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Speaking of self-made, he sneered, I heard a rather amusing rumor. Something about your generous donations to this very charity conveniently coinciding with, let's just say, a certain film tax credit. Almost as if you were using philanthropy as a tax shelter, darling. Is that the kind of self-made we're talking about? Building your empire on loopholes and creative accounting. That was it. Statham's eyes hardened. Attacking his acting was one thing, but questioning his integrity, implying he was exploiting a charity for personal gain, was a line Devereux had just brazenly crossed. The polite facade shattered. Everyone expected a punch. They braced for it. Statham was known for his physicality, his ability to deliver bone-crushing blows with effortless grace. But instead, he did something far more devastating. He leaned in, his voice low and steady, cutting through the surrounding chatter like a laser. Julian, he said, his eyes locked on Devereux's, you mistake inherited wealth for intelligence. You confuse privilege with accomplishment. And you mistake my silence for acceptance. This wasn't a threat of violence. It was a promise of intellectual annihilation. Statham's response was a calculated verbal takedown, a dismantling of Devereux's entire persona that left the billionaire's son visibly shaken. It was a response no one saw coming. Statham continued, his voice gaining strength. You mock my acting, but what have you ever created, Julian? What tangible contribution have you made to the world beyond spending your father's money? You criticize my lack of emoting, but you wouldn't know genuine emotion if it slapped you in the face. You've never struggled, never faced adversity, never earned anything of value. He paused, letting his words sink in. You see my physicality as a limitation, but it's the result of years of discipline and hard work, something you clearly know nothing about. You mistake my background for a disadvantage, but it's the foundation upon which I built my entire career. While you were yachting in Monaco, I was honing my craft, pushing myself to the limit, and actually working. Statham's words were like a wrecking ball, tearing down the carefully constructed facade of Julian Devereux. The confident smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic. His eyes darted around, seeking validation, but finding only uncomfortable stares. He had built his entire identity on being superior, on being effortlessly better than everyone else, but Statham had exposed the truth, he was nothing more than a privileged child, utterly dependent on his father's fortune. The carefully curated Instagram image of effortless cool crumbled before their eyes. The designer clothes, the expensive watches, the private jets, they were all just props, masking a profound lack of substance. Statham had laid bare Devereux's deepest insecurities, revealing the empty shell beneath the expensive veneer. A hush fell over the immediate vicinity. Conversation ceased, champagne flutes stilled midair. Everyone had witnessed the takedown, the brutal dismantling of Julian Devereux's carefully crafted persona. Initially, there was stunned silence, a collective intake of breath at the sheer audacity of Statham's words. This wasn't the polite society they were accustomed to. Then, a murmur rippled through the crowd. At first, it was barely audible, a subtle rustling of silk and hushed whispers. But it grew steadily louder, a wave of approval washing over Statham. He had voiced what many of them had secretly thought for years. The shift in public opinion was palpable. Devereux, once the darling of the social scene, was now exposed, vulnerable, and decidedly less popular. Devereux, visibly flustered, stammered, That's absurd. You're twisting things." He attempted a weak laugh, but it sounded hollow and forced. He tried to regain control of the situation, searching for a witty retort, a cutting remark to deflect the attention. But the words wouldn't come. The confidence had evaporated, replaced by a raw, almost childlike vulnerability. He straightened his tie, a nervous tic betraying his inner turmoil. He attempted to make eye contact with someone, anyone, who would offer a supportive glance, but found only averted gazes and thinly veiled smirks. The humiliation was complete. He had been stripped bare, exposed as a fraud, and there was nothing he could do to salvage the situation. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The gala, once a bastion of polite society, transformed into a buzzing hive of gossip and speculation. Word of the confrontation spread like wildfire, fueled by breathless whispers and furtive glances. Within minutes, the story was trending on social media, snippets of overheard conversations and grainy photos fueling the online frenzy. The next morning, the incident dominated the headlines. "Statham slams billionaire's son at charity gala," screamed one tabloid. "Privilege versus grit, Statham's savage takedown goes viral," declared another. News outlets dissected every word, every gesture, analyzing the power dynamics and the underlying social commentary. The internet exploded with memes, GIFs, and endless debates about who was right and who was wrong. While Devereux was left floundering in the wreckage of his shattered image, Statham executed a quiet and masterful exit. He offered a curt nod to the few onlookers who dared to meet his gaze, then turned and walked away, his movements deliberate and unhurried. He didn't gloat, didn't bask in the newfound admiration. He simply left, leaving Devereux to face the full force of the fallout. It was a power move, a subtle demonstration of control. He had delivered his message, defended his integrity, and now he was done. The drama, the spectacle, the social media frenzy, none of it seemed to affect him. He simply walked away, leaving a stunned and humiliated Devereux in his wake. The next few days were a masterclass in ineffective damage control. Devereux's PR team scrambled to contain the fallout, releasing carefully worded statements emphasizing his commitment to philanthropy and his respect for Statham's achievements. They even arranged a series of interviews designed to showcase his humble side and his dedication to giving back. However, the attempts backfired spectacularly. The public saw through the carefully crafted narrative, recognizing it as a transparent attempt to rehabilitate his tarnished image. The interviews only amplified his perceived arrogance and lack of self-awareness. Every forced smile, every carefully chosen word, only served to reinforce the impression that he was out of touch and utterly clueless. The more he tried to fix things, the worse they became. As Devereux's image continued to plummet, public opinion swung decisively in Statham's favor. He was hailed as a hero, a symbol of self-made success standing up to the entitled elite. His authenticity resonated with people tired of the superficiality and privilege that dominated the headlines. Statham's grounded demeanor, his dedication to his craft, and his genuine commitment to charitable causes all contributed to his newfound popularity. He was seen as the real deal, a stark contrast to the spoiled and out-of-touch Devereux. The narrative shifted from Statham's outburst to Statham's truth bomb, and the public embraced him as a champion of the everyman. The incident had several unintended consequences. Statham's charity work, previously a private endeavor, received a massive influx of donations and volunteers, inspired by his genuine commitment. The Children's Hope Gala, despite the drama, ended up raising significantly more money than previous years. Conversely, Devereux's social standing took a nosedive. Invitations to exclusive events dried up, and his once loyal circle of friends seemed to mysteriously disappear. His carefully curated online persona became a target for ridicule and mockery. Even his father's influence couldn't fully shield him from the social ostracization. The ripple effects of Statham's takedown were far-reaching and surprisingly potent. For Jason Statham, the incident was barely a blip on the radar. He continued to thrive in his career, landing more high-profile roles and cementing his status as an action movie icon. He didn't capitalize on the publicity, didn't give interviews gloating about his victory. He simply kept working, kept honing his craft, and kept proving his worth. In fact, many argued that the incident had actually enhanced his reputation. He was now seen as more than just a tough guy, he was a man of principle, unafraid to speak his mind and defend his integrity. The public respected him not just for his on-screen persona, but for his off-screen character. His authenticity shone even brighter in contrast to Devereux's carefully constructed image. Julian Devereux's future remained uncertain. Some whispered that he had retreated from the public eye, seeking solace in his father's wealth and licking his wounds in private. Others claimed he was undergoing a period of self-reflection, attempting to reinvent himself as a more genuine and compassionate individual. Whether he truly learned a valuable lesson from the experience is debatable. Perhaps he simply retreated further into his bubble of privilege, convinced that the world was unfair and that he was the victim of unwarranted scrutiny. Or perhaps, just perhaps, Statham's words had planted a seed of doubt, a nagging voice that would eventually push him to confront his own shortcomings and strive for something more meaningful than inherited wealth and superficial validation. Only time would tell. The clash between Jason Statham and Julian Devereux was more than just a celebrity squabble. It was a microcosm of a larger societal debate, the enduring tension between genuine achievement and inherited privilege. It was a stark reminder that wealth doesn't equate to worth, and that true success is earned, not given. Statham's enduring appeal lies in his embodiment of the self-made man. He represents the possibility of rising above circumstances, of achieving greatness through hard work, dedication, and unwavering integrity. In a world increasingly obsessed with superficiality and inherited advantage, he stands as a beacon of authenticity, a reminder that true strength comes not from wealth or privilege, but from the unwavering belief in oneself. And that, perhaps, is the most savage response of all.